It's tier list time. We're back, and I'm excited because we're doing ranged tier list. I love a lot of ranged items, and I have so much footage for this, and yeah, I'm just super excited to be doing some more tier list discussion. Got a lot of good feedback for the melee one, both in private messages and the video itself. And this one I'm gonna try a few things a little different. We're gonna try some editing, try and make it a little bit more clear and concise with certain things and more focused. That way there's not fumbling around. That's the idea, at least. We'll see how it goes. And yeah, we're just gonna start. And we're gonna start with, somehow, despite the fact that why do we gotta start off with something so good and something I have like almost no footage for somehow? But let's go looking for footage. And so we don't have a ton of footage for the Alchemic Carbine, unfortunately. The only footage we just have that really shows off how strong it is spoiler boss footage, because I've gotten 2 no-hits with the Carbine against that, one of which was in this build. However, we do have some footage of it versus Hand of the King and Giant. So, if we look at it, while these magic missiles and flamethrower are going off, you're going to see, just from a couple of seconds right there, if we go back just a couple of seconds, let's start again in the fight. We're going to get a couple hits off with the magic missiles here. So we get our hits off. He's at about 60%-ish health. And the time that we roll, the Alchemic Carbine and the Burn-In Oil has already taken him down to about 20% health tops. And then we just shoot a couple magic missiles. We're going to shoot another one, and if you look at his HP up top, right up here in this area, it's going to go down incredibly quick with the combination of both. So it doesn't fully show off how strong the Carbine is, but essentially any low to medium HP creature is going to die in one shot within a few seconds. They're going to die in 2 shots pretty much instantly, and then elites are going to die in 2 shots in a couple of seconds, and 3 shots almost instantly. Alchemic Carbine is insane. It has infinite utility. If we go to some more footage, because I do have a little bit more footage. So looking at it in biomes, footage is a little blurry, but we see here, 1 shot and he already has lost a decent chunk of his HP. And then he dies in the shot, the Infantry Bow, obviously. But it's going to be the same situation for him. And, you know, unfortunately this is showing off the strength of the Infantry Bow, which we'll get to in a second. But if you see this grenader here, all I've done is shot him with the Carbine. And this wasn't a special Carbine in any sense of the way. All it did was shoot flames. So we get a fire. It didn't have bonus to anything else special, I believe. But by the time we had rolled behind him, he was already down to half HP. So you can really see how quick it kills him. See, he's already dead there. So that really goes to show that the Alchemic Carbine is stupid. It is stupid. And unfortunately, we're starting off with such a strong item that we actually have to create a new tier. Add a row above. This is going to be the introduction, but not the last one. This is not going to be the last one in this tier. Here, let's just do it here. So the Alchemic Carbine is officially going to be the first member of the Super S tier. Now to qualify for that, you have to be incredibly powerful, incredibly consistent, easy to use, and have so much upside that there's almost no reason not to grab this item. And I think Alchemic Carbine does that. I don't think there's ever a reason, if you're playing red or purple, that you wouldn't want to grab that Carbine. Like, yeah, you might already have your build figured out. You might be wanting to do blood shield plus blood sword type thing, but the Carbine would still probably outclass both of those items. Yeah, this is an incredible item. Run it. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, we have the Beginner's Bow. I don't have any footage for this. I hope I don't need to explain why this is an F tier, but since people are crazy, I guess I will, real quick. We'll go down to, and people like, I beat Hand of the King on boss cell 1. Which is a comment I actually got about my last tier list, is that they beat Hand of the King on 1 BC with Simlance, so it must be good. Yeah, it does a base damage of DPS of 113, and it has nothing special about it. It's a meme item. Speaking of meme items, that's too kind to say this. The blowgun just sucks. I tried it so much. I have tried so much to get this item to work. I've 1, 2. I definitely have multiple. I've 2 full runs almost here, and this one is blowgun as well. This one's even called "Why Do I Keep Running Blowgun?" So let's try and look at all. Let's try and talk about what we want to do with the blowgun. It crits when you are behind them, does decent-ish damage, and that's a pretty good thing in concept. 1500 damage at base stats sounds decent. So why does the blowgun suck? Well, let's go to a boss fight. So first off, actually let's look at this versus an enemy here. Alright, so versus some enemies with the blowgun, we're going to want to try and get behind them. Pretty good, you know, very basic concept. In this instance, we have Ripper, Throwing Knife, and Phaser. So we're going to get a bleed off, we're going to get a crit off, and then we're going to be able to teleport behind them, get another crit off, and rip it out of them. Now, on paper, that sounds really strong. So I just teleport behind him. If you look at that, let's go back just a second so we can show it off on this elite. So we have electric going. We have the bleed starting to go. We have 2 arrows of each kind in him. We're going to phaser onto him. We're going to pull the arrows out. So now he's at half health, and we have that crit set up super easy. We should be able to kill him in 1 hit here. He's at low HP. He's got stasses going. And we crit him, and it does about half of an HP bar. So that would require 4 hits with the enemy not looking at you. And that's not a back. That's not versus bosses. Now, I could show the boss fight in this, and we will real quick. It's versus Conjunct. Obviously, this isn't the boss you want to go, but this is the boss that gives you the most rewards in terms of scroll fragments and biome choice. That was an awful decision by me. But you absolutely you can win this one. I did win this fight, barely, but it would be disingenuous to say that the blowgun had anything to do with that. I think it was 100% the thrown knife and the wolf trap in this fight. And let's say you don't want to do that. You know, it's not a fight you should be going because Conjunctivius doesn't have a back. Let's go to a different blowgun run. Looking at Concierge, this shouldn't be that hard. We have support, we have a heavy turret, we have bonus ammo on it. This thing only has 5 ammo, naturally. So that's another flaw on it, but we have bonus ammo on this one, and we have a Boomerang to help us with damage. So let's see our crit damage versus Concierge and how well it does. So that's how much damage it did. That's a crit, and we have to be behind him, and he's gonna turn around always. He's gonna turn around right after this. Just looking at that eyeball in it, that means we gotta get 40, maybe 35-ish crits on him. Obviously, we're gonna have other items helping us out, making it a little quicker, but already we're out of ammo. We're out of ammo, and we've taken a 1/6 of his HP. And now, unless we have something like a stun grenade, or Ripper, or Phaser with Ripper, or a shield, we are already doomed. And, you know, maybe we run a shield, maybe that's the issue. But it just is awful. And that's not even talking about its other issues. Phaser, if you want to run the Phaser strategy, Phaser has terrible targeting right now with rats everywhere, and it just is inconsistent. And then, if we want to try another strategy with it, so if we want to try networking, where we shoot one enemy after another and just rattle off damage, it doesn't work. And we have a shield with it too, so we have our ammo back. We have, you know, we're trying to stack a blowgun dart on every single enemy so we can get a ton of networking damage off between them. Hit and run, but as you see, it's just not doing damage. Even when we're critting the enemies, the other enemies are still living. Like, even small, low HP enemies like the Mushroom Boys are living, and I believe this run I die right here, but it just shows that this item is bad. So, blowgun, get out of here. You suck. You're trash. I might get a little bit of hate for that, but I genuinely hate this item. Okay, let's move on to an item that I don't hate. The Boomerang. Kind of a memey weapon. Not gonna lie. It is kind of a, you know, it doesn't seem like it could be that strong. It has issues, but it's an offhand weapon. So that means it's gonna be competing with stuff like the Firebrands, the Ice Shards, the Throw Knife, and the Blaze Axe. And that's really where its biggest flaw comes in. That's not inherently bad, but it doesn't do anything that these items do. It doesn't do anything better than them without a fixed chasing. And it's kind of inconsistent, but it's still usable. It definitely, and it can combine well with these other offhand items. Because you can get spreads of oil on it pretty easily. You can combine it with Firebrands or Ice Shards. You can combine it with, and another one, let me pull it up. So one thing you can do with the Boomerang is combine it with a slower hidden weapon like a Giant Killer. In this case, I pair it with the Mushroom Boy as well. So we throw the Boomerang, and this Boomerang has bonus to poison, and victims release a toxic cloud, and bonus to bleed. So it's a really strong Boomerang. You're not going to get that always, but you can combine it with something like a Giant Killer, which needs a little help in biomes. That way you can easily clear out other biomes, and make your life with the Giant Killer a little easier for biomes, and then the Giant Killer just handles bosses. And that's kind of the ideal thing you want with a Boomerang. Now, unfortunately, it's a little, I don't want to say inconsistent at that, but yeah, it is inconsistent at that, and that's kind of its main issue. I think it's a C tier item, strong but flawed. Bow and Endless Quiver. I might have footage for this, but there's not much to talk about here. It's a generic bow with bad stats. We're actually gonna do two items here at the same time. We're gonna compare the Bow and Endless Quiver and the Multi-Nox Bow. These are very similar items where they just sort of shoot. Now, the Bow and Endless Quiver, it gets crits off, but its base damage combos per 3 shots. Actually, no, let's go per second. Damage per second, because per combo is a little more important. Per combo, you're getting 133 damage and a crit added. Per combo for the Multi-Nox is 228. And it's a little, yeah, per combo, it's way higher. Per DPS, it's also still way higher. And that kind of is all you need to know about the Bow and Endless Quiver. It's not special in any way. You get a crit multiplier. You don't need to worry about ammo, but you really shouldn't need to worry about ammo with the Multi-Nox Bow, or most ranged items that are any good, because you'll phase change or kill the enemy before you run out of ammo, if it's a good item. Now, the Multiple Nox Bow is very strong. It has good range, has good ammo. It's not special in any way, but it just works really well with support and tranquility and turret setups at the moment. So, Multiple Nox Bow, we'll just put it in, I think it's in the A tier. I think it's like a low A tier, but it's very consistent, I feel. It doesn't do anything special, but what it does do is very good. And unfortunately, the Bow and Endless Quiver, I think we're going to put it in the C. You can win with it, I think. Maybe we put it in D. Because it doesn't do anything special, but it also doesn't really hinder you in any way. It sort of is just a usable bow. Yeah, we'll put it at like the top of D, I think. Alright, E-Whip. E-Whip. I might get destroyed for not putting it in Super S tier, but I'd get destroyed if I didn't put it at least in S tier. I got a bit of footage for this, and part of my issue with it is I suck with Wings of the Crow. So if you can run Wings of the Crow halfway decent, you're good. So, looking at E-Whip versus a boss, we have Wings of the Crow here, we have wolf traps, we have a shield, and we're gonna easily see that it destroys this boss. It destroys pretty much any boss it goes near. I got hit because I'm bad with Wings of the Crow, like I said, but, yeah. You wouldn't think I'd be so bad with an item that auto-targets onto enemies, but I somehow managed to be. Why was I trying to parry that? That was just dumb of me. I did it again. I have no idea why I decided that was the hill I wanted to die on in this fight, but E-Whip itself, it does amazing damage. It's very powerful. It's very consistent. It has a built-in status modifier that's not a common status modifier. Why am I parrying these? I don't need to. I have no reason to, really. But yeah, E-Whip is stupid good. If I was to nitpick it, I guess sometimes the range is inconsistent. Sometimes the damage isn't quite enough if you don't get the stuff. But it's definitely an S tier item. Explosive Crossbow. Disclaimer. I probably should have done this at the start. Disclaimers. This is my opinion. This is for 5BC plus, or 4BC plus. And also this is for 1.9. So the rework 2.0, that's really strong. Not in this. That said, this item is mediocre in 1.9. It's nothing special. Looking at it in a biome, we saw right there. That was a crit from a slow acting weapon that didn't kill a lowish medium HP mob. Let's look at it again. Yeah. That one is a little more understandable, but we also have 8 survival, which is insane for this map. Yeah. I think that's all that needs to be said about this. It's mediocre. It's not awful. It's not so bad that you can't win. I actually win in this run, and I get a no-hit on Timekeeper. This is the no-hit run that I posted a while back on Timekeeper. I think it's usable, but I think it's better than Bone and Quiver. But yeah. Also, one other little thing. You can definitely win with most any of these items. Not the F tiers, I don't think. You can win with Blowgun, but it wouldn't be Blowgun winning. It'd be something like a Hakuto Bow and a Flamethrower Turret winning. But yeah. Moving on. Fireblast. I actually just got a run today with Fireblast, and I think I need to talk about Fireblast and Lightning Bolt at the same time as well with this one. So, these are both items where you stand in place and just try and unload as much damage on enemies, kill them before they get a chance to react. With bosses, you have to do the motion a couple of times, and that's their biggest issue, is that you have to stand in place. You can't maneuver really with them. They're a bit slow to start up. They do a lot of damage over time, but not so much in a quick burst. Now, in the run I got, so if you look at it, it does really good damage. Obviously, this one's super powered, but if you get the oil off, you can get something like a Hakuto Bow. The owl's doing oil for me. It's a very good glass cannon weapon. Obviously, even more so in this case. But if we skip later into the run, we're going to see that it kind of is doing the same thing here. It just does slow damage at the start. Nice shot. It does slow damage at the start, but if you can get it on the enemy, watch the damage this does to his eyeball. And remember, this is a level 4 still, so if I was to get like a bonus to poison one going at level 12, it would be similar damage. So yeah. It does really good damage. However, is that enough? Thinking on it, I think the Fireblast is a little less consistent. And by a noticeable margin. I think once the Lightning Bolt gets its damage going, I don't know, the Lightning Bolt takes a little longer to get going. But it has better crit conditions. I was running this with Instinct of the Master Arms, and it was not reducing my crit timer at all. I almost want to put both of them in C tier. In my pre-draft, I had Lightning Bolt in B tier. But I think it might be like I think Fireblast might be a bit better, actually. After that run, it felt a lot more good right away. Whereas the Lightning Bolt, it needs a second to get going. It needs a good fix with it. The Fireblast, all it needs is oil. And I think that's pretty easy to get in purple and red. It can also be run on red, which is a big buff to it. And I also put a lot of value into what they can do versus bosses. I should have noted that as well. I'll get to that more in a minute, actually. So yeah. Moving on. Firebrands. This is there's not much to talk about this one. It's a really good offhand option that provides fire. Let's talk about it, and let's also, they're not related, but we'll talk about Marksman Bow at the same time because they are in the same run. So, biggest issue with Marksman Bow, it's really good in biomes. It's really good in biomes. However, the biggest issue is that once you get to Hand of the King, you're going to see that it does no work here. Everything that happens in this next second is all going to be the Firebrands, the Owl, and the Flamethrower. And considering Hand of the King as a required boss, we can't ignore that. We can't just skip Hand of the King. So, right away, you're going to see I get 2 shots off with the bow. They didn't do anything special. But by this time, the Owl, the Flamethrower, and the Firebrands have done a ton of damage. So he's already down to about 2/3 HP. And we do get a crit off. It does okay damage. But during the time that I had to line up and get away from him while having support and tranquility up for the bow, my Owl and my Firebrands had already done and Flamethrower already done all the damage needed to phase change him. And if we look at, ooh, that was quick. He actually gets a hit on me. So now we don't have, this is all the Flamethrower and the bow and the Firebrands. So we get a crit off there. It does an okay chunk. But during that time, actually we got a couple of crits, and during that time the Firebrands and the Flamethrower had taken away another, basically in that instance, the 3 crits do about the same damage that the Firebrands and the Flamethrower had done during that time. So yeah, I put a lot of emphasis into what you can do versus Hand of the King and Giant and the Spoiler boss. And I think that the Marksman Bow is just a little too weak against it. But if we look at it in a biome sense, so looking at the Marksman Bow in a biome, it is really good. If we look at it, I freeze him, and he dies. And that would have killed him at max HP, easily, with that damage. And, you know, that's kind of its gimmick. It's really good in biomes. It's good in some bosses. If we look at the Momatic fight, and not wanting to undersell it, the Marksman Bow is okay in some boss fights. Here's it versus Momatic with an Icebow, and you see I took that first phase out with ease, and that's going to kind of translate. I get robbed by that hitbox, but if we look at it, it just easily takes her out of that phase. And it's kind of the same way. So it's good in some bosses, but versus Giant, it's not going to do anything really. Versus Hand of the King, it's not going to do anything, and those are 2 bosses that are required to beat 4 and 5 BC. So yeah. Firebrands, though, very strong. Very strong. I think it's an A tier. It's a little outclassed by a couple of other items we'll talk about in a bit. But it's good. And then this. Probably a D tier. I think you can win with it. You just need to work around it. That looks okay. Yeah. Frostblast. This might be a hot take. It really might be. So, my initial thought was going to be Frostblast right around there. Then something was discovered. What was discovered with the Frostblast is that it sort of creates an insane slowdown chip build with Ice Shards and Frostbite and Crusher, and at the end I get Swarm, but you can already see monsters can't do anything to you. Let me show my health there. So I end up taking this swarm and moving forward with it. While obviously that looks really strong in biomes, we just talked about how important an item like this that's strong in a biome can do in a boss fight. So, and you know, green doesn't have a lot of variation with its skills, so you do need good weapons to actually win the boss fight. And Hand of the King has very good ice resist. So how does it do versus Hand of the King? Well, he becomes so slowed by everything that even through his ice resist, we have plenty of time to react to everything. We're playing on green, so we're gonna have extra HP and not be able to take extra attacks, and he really just is slow. We are slowing him so much that we're able to react to almost all of his attacks. The only one that's hard to react to still is the slash down slam, which is always his hardest one to react to, regardless. And it took his HP down really quick. We have double damage on our swarm, but swarm, you know, green doesn't have a ton of skills. You can get a swarm with bonus to poison, and then your crusher has poison spread. That's not an unrealistic thing to get. And because of that, because of how good it is with that Ice Shards build, and how easy that build is to set up, all you need is Ice Shards and a Frostblast. Level doesn't even really matter. Because of all that, I think A tier? I think A tier. Alright, Heavy Crossbow. This might disappoint some people. Formerly, Heavy Crossbow in 1.8 was probably in this range. It's not in that range anymore. It got a rework, and on paper it doesn't look too bad. You reload, it's a little tedious, but it's still good in biomes. So, Heavy Crossbow, still good in biomes. If we look at it, you know, it's a bit tedious to reload it, but it's killing the enemies in one shot. Even when not critting, it's still doing some good damage. We have something like Explosive Decoy to protect us if we need it, or Wolf Trap. So, you know, doing really good in biomes. Still, you know, I'd still say this is probably up around a S tier contender for biomes, because you can just shotgun every enemy and kill them in one hit. That's a very good thing. However, like we said, bosses are important. Bosses are incredibly important to how good an item is. Right now, we have a Heavy Crossbow, level 12, with bonus to poison. And we also have a Wolf Trap that does poison. So we have the poison source. And we're going into... I also shot an arrow in front of us, an extra arrow. So, a lot of damage there. A lot of potential damage. Let's see how this first crit does against Hand of the King. He's poisoned. We get him lined up. We're behind him, so he can't parry any of it. That's how much damage it does to bosses now. Why is that? Well, it got an extra nerf on top of what happened to it. It has a... Outside of the normal boss damage cap, it has its own boss damage cap that basically makes it do 0 damage to bosses now. That was the Explosive Decoy, for the record, right there. So yeah. It did... You know, if you look at the math there, that's 3 crits now I've gotten, plus the Explosive Decoy. So let's say the Explosive Decoy is another crit. And that's probably being generous. The Explosive Decoy is probably doing more damage. So we've done 3 shots and 3 reloads. There's a 4th shot. It did about the same damage. So, you know, even if you might have parried 1 or 2, it did about the same because of the damage cap on it. So we're at we're at 5 shots because we're going to count the... Well, no, yeah, that's 4 shots if we're counting the Explosive Decoy as another crit, basically. 5 shots. 6 shots. That Explosive Decoy did a lot of damage. Let's count that as 2 more shots. So we're at probably 8 shots to take. Oh, you know, no. Let's count that as a regular. We're at about 7 shots now in terms of damage that we need. That was 8 shots, all of which require a reload while dodging the boss that does the most damage to you. This item is awful. This is so bad in bosses that I think it goes there. Sorry, heavy crossbow. Alright, Hemorrhage. Not a lot of footage for Hemorrhage, but it's okay. It's definitely an okay weapon. If we look at it, has a very unique effect, and this is a 5 BC only item, which is unfortunate, but it has a cool effect. Basically, it does very high crit damage and all you need to crit is bleed, and it causes bleed when it hits, but chances are you're going to have a way of bleeding. Unless you're playing it on green, then you might not, but it also causes damage on poison, which is easy to get with a wolf trap or a crusher. So it does really good damage, but it has low ammo. Now, how good is it? We do have some footage of it, but it doesn't really show it off in a good light. It was kind of a joke build. It's okay. Its biggest issue is that sometimes it runs out of ammo before it can phase transition, but it's not that big of an issue. It does good damage. It has a bit of a wind-up, but you can get this victim slow nearby enemies a fix on it. And it causes bleed. So if you have stuff with bonus to bleed on survival, this is a reliable way to get that bleed source. It's only 3 seconds of bleed, so it's not super great, but if you're using Hemorrhage, it's going to be part of your main weapon setup anyways, and you have a wolf trap that's has a bonus to bleed, toxic cloud, and bonus to poison, you're set. So yeah, I think it's works extremely well with open wounds. I guess it does. You could phaser with it, but don't do that. don't do that. Don't listen to that. I think it's okay. It has a slow wind up. I think it's like top of B, bottom of A-ish type situation. Alright, Hakuto bow. You already know it's at least there. There's too much to talk about with what the Hakuto can do. You can pair it with Ice Shards for Frostbite gimmick. A good gimmick, by the way, not like a bad one. You can pair it with Carbine and it destroys everything. I have that spoiler footage, if you want to look at it, of me taking the final boss down to 1 HP incredibly easily with it. Let's just look at like one build. I don't think I need to show footage of Hakuto being good, but we will. So let's just look at this Hakuto versus Hand of the King with a blood sword. This is something you can run on red, by the way, but you won't have support, but you'd have better mutations and more bulk, but in one phase, we've already taken him down. That was he did that attack really quick. Good thing I had disengage. So in one phase, we'd already taken him down to about a third of his HP. Now, once we get going with it, it gets even better. And you could say that's the blood sword, but that's the Hakuto as well. Everyone knows it's the Hakuto. Everyone knows the Hakuto is good. The only thing is it a super S tier? And I don't think it is. And here's why. I think it has potential to be. However, I think it's RNG dependent. Too RNG dependent. You need to get bonus damage to something on it. And that's not super hard to do. But it's hard enough to where sometimes you just don't get that. And you have an item that, while still good, even without that bonus damage, is going to feel a bit like dead weight as compared to something like an Alchemic Carbine, which just works on its own. Like, yeah, if you get the bonus to burn in oil, that's great, but even without it, it's going to kill everything. So yeah, Hakuto is insane. Absolutely run it. Don't like, nothing taken away from that or anything, but yeah, it's incredible. Icebow. Icebow's good. I feel like Icebow's getting a bad rap lately for having less slow and not spread than the Fireblast, which is true, but it has good range, and that's important. What you can do with it is you can shoot down a long hallway. So, what we can do with the Icebow is we can use it as a support item to really help at a range and let our other items kill. So we shoot down a long hallway, then we kill it with a Marksman Bow. We can do this with a Giant Killer. We can freeze him, kill him in a couple of hits with the Mushroom Boy and the Giant Killer. And it's okay at that. It's not incredible or anything, but it's definitely a usable item. It's very good in biomes, I feel, and really underrated in biomes. Just because you're outclassed doesn't mean you're bad, and I think that's kind of the key thing. You're not going to take this deep into a run or anything, but it's going to be your biome clear. And what separates that is that a level 4 Icebow you can take to Cavern. Like, you can take all the way up to Cavern, and then you can get your new item there. And that's important with items like this, is to separate what their use is going to be. You're going to use this to get you to Hand of the King, as opposed to something like Heavy Crossbow. You could do that, but then you're super reliant on RNG in your shops. For the Icebow, you either can keep it and, you know, beat up Timekeeper, get up to Hand of the King, and still use it in Hand of the King, and it won't be super effective, but it'll work. Or you can swap it out for a shield. You can swap it out for pretty much any base item in a shop. And I think as a support item, it is really, really good. Now, I don't think it's perfect or anything, but I think it is definitely in the B tier. Ice Crossbow. I don't want to talk about Ice Crossbow. It's not that good, it's boring, it's slow. I have footage of this. So the only Ice Crossbow footage I have is me being the spoiler boss with it. Which I guess says something, that it can technically win the run. So I don't know if it deserves to be put in F tier. But it's real bad. It's completely useless against the giant. I won against the giant with that Icebow, but don't take it in that fight. It's borderline useless against Hand of the King. It's incredibly slow, and you need to work around it a lot. Like, you can't have anything doing bonus poison effects or victims burn effects. Otherwise, it's going to ruin your ability to freeze the enemies, and it requires way too much workaround. At the end, when in the run where I was using it, it had bonus to poison, and what I did was I had a legendary green item of some kind, or a legendary like trap. I think it was like a double crossbow-matic that did a toxic cloud and had a crusher. And all I was doing was just shooting the regular shot off. I wasn't using its mechanic at all, where you do crits, because it's a useless mechanic. So yeah, Ice Cross was real bad, but it did technically get a win in 5BC, so I guess it's better than these two. Yeah, Ice Shards, what's there to even say? Let me put it above that. Yeah, it's Ice Shards. Do I need to get footage of this? Half the channels on, half the videos on my channel are Ice Shards doing everything. We literally have something we call the Exodia build. Let me look this up. Alright, here's all you need to know about Ice Shards. There you go. It's part of the Exodia build. Ice Shards are better than every other weapon by a large margin. You actively are making your build worse if you're not using them in 99.9% of the cases. Yeah, what else is there even to say? Alright, Infantry Bow. We did a guide on this 2 weeks ago, so there's not much to talk about here that isn't covered in that, but essentially it can form a very powerful, let me get the footage up. So we go more in depth in the guide for the Infantry Bow, but essentially you can, it's also showing off more of the Carbine being incredible, but essentially you can get a grapple hook, get an infantry grenade, and form this super powerful, super high damage per shot build. And it does really good. Like, it stuns the enemies as well, and maneuvers them around awkward positions while having infinite ammo. The infantry grenade lets you get arrow return, and you're constantly getting these super powered crits off with the instinct of the Master of Arms. So yeah, Infantry Bow is really good, but it is very, very dependent on build. it requires a lot of workaround. You want to try and get that bonus to whatever on it. Bleed, poison, burn, and oil. Then after that, you have to get a Firebrand, a Carbine, or a Blood Sword with it. Then after that, you have to get a Grapple Hook and an Infantry Grenade. So it has its flaws. And because of that, I think it can't be an A tier. It's not consistent enough. But I think it's, when you get that build, it is so strong that you just go with it. Magic missiles. Another thing where you kind of gotta stand in place and shoot. It's okay. I wanted to put, when I was initially, like, way early on planning this out, I had full intention of putting it, like, right there. I wanted to make a meme tier for it specifically, but then I got a no-hit on the spoiler boss with it. So I can't. I cannot put it in F tier or D tier, but I can put it in C tier. There's not a ton of footage for it. I do have footage. I don't want to look it up that much, but it's very, like, I was talking about how this is pretty, RNG dependent. This is super RNG dependent. You need bonus to bleed and, bonus to poison. You need a ton of things on, but once it gets it, it's definitely worth it. If you can find that legendary magic missile and put it into your build, it can do really good damage. But it's super inconsistent at that. Nerves of Steel. I have almost no Nerves of Steel footage, but let's take a look at its stats. It's a good item. It's a good item as long as you're playing good. 213 critical damage per second. That's really good. Let's look. Base hit is 160, and one crit is 160. So let's compare that to a crit from something else strong. So if we look at the Nerves of Steel's base hit damage for one crit is 160. And if we look at a Frantic Sword, its strongest hit is 182 on a crit. And we all know how strong the Frantic Sword hits. So I think it's hard. And that crit is going to kill most enemies. Like, the enemy is probably going to be dead before that point. But let's say you get that 5th hit off, that's going to kill a ton of enemies. It's very similar in regards to something like a Sim Lance. This garbage item. You know, as much as I think this item isn't good, that base damage on that 3rd hit is really strong even without a crit, which is what you're going to be getting in a boss fight. You're not going to get a crit in a boss fight with this, but that damage is still going to hit really hard. It's going to be incredibly slow and not good, but yeah. Any chance I can get to make fun of Sim Lance, I guess. Yeah. Nerve of Steel is really strong when you're playing good with it, but I think it's just too inconsistent. I think it's like right there. Pyrotechnics. It's basically a consistent version of Magic Missile. I do have footage of it. So, if we look at the Pyrotechnics in an actual run, it's going to be this super glass cannon, super consistent version of a Magic Missile, basically. Right here we have the oil coming off of the Boomerang, and it's just popping enemies in a couple of hits, because its crits are really easy to activate. It has a little worse tracking, which is important, but nothing you can't work around. In this case, we have an owl. You can get Lacerating, or you can get Corrosive Cloud, any of these things to help with bats above you. And yeah, it's just a very consistent version of Magic Missile. You get the damage off a lot quicker than you would on a... or a lot more easily than you would on a Magic Missile. And it's really strong. It's very good at these glass cannon, all-out offense builds. And yeah. I think that's all there is to say about it. It's just a very strong item. If we look at it in a boss, you can already see giants going down instantly, which, you know, ow, and bonus damage, but yeah. Oh, and this is where I got the bug. Nice. You suck, giant. Yeah, it's good. It's good. I think we put it like in B tier. It's not so strong and consistent because it's on purple. You do need oil, but I think it's good enough to win runs if you find one and want to play it. Quick Bow, it got nerfed, and then got buffed because it got super nerfed. But it's a cooldown reduction machine, and it's very good at that. But I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a little on the weak side sometimes. I want to put it here, and I think I will. I think you can build around it enough to mitigate those flaws, and it's pretty easy to build around. But I don't see a reason why you wouldn't just take multi-knot, unless you need the cooldown reduction, but then just take Ice Shards. I don't think there's much reason to take it, but I don't think I think you can win with it pretty easily. Still. Repeater Crossbow. We literally just did a guide. I uploaded that guide an hour ago, as I'm recording this. And as a comment in that guide alluded to, they think it's an S-rank item, and I agree. This item is incredible. I'm not going to show off the footage because I'm literally uploading a guide and run this week, like probably a day or two ago as of the posting of this video. This item is incredible. Get a wolf trap and every enemy in the game melts, including bosses. At the very least, look at the boss fights in that run, and yeah, that's all there is to it. Carbine. I do have footage of Carbine. It's not worth talking about, really. Looking at Carbine, we're going to see its biggest strength right here. It crits enemies behind other enemies, and it doesn't do a lot of damage in that time. And when it's not critting enemies, it doesn't do a lot of damage. And it runs out of ammo very quickly. You can already see there that Rampager wasn't an elite, wasn't anything special, it's just a regular Rampager. Took half my ammo out. And while it's okay in biomes, usable in biomes, once we get to a boss fight, this is with tranquility and support. Once we get to a boss fight, this is with tranquility and support and a turret, we're going to see that I have already used up a lot of ammo. I'm having to use a shield to keep my ammo up, which, is fine. Not an issue at all. But look at how slow I'm damaging him. Also, I got hit by that. That was awful on my part. This is me playing impatient, but if you look at, we're already out of ammo. We've run out of ammo multiple times and gotten it back with our shield, but we've only done a third of his HP with a glass cannon build. Like a little over a third. And, looking at the actual damage, a lot of that is the double crossbow mag chipping him down while we just stand here like an idiot. Because we ran out of ammo and we don't want to approach him with his aura up. So, yeah, this item sucks. How bad is it, though? Is it worse than anything in here? It might be. I don't think so. Because it carries biomes okay enough. And can clear curse as well. And does okay against Giant. So the biggest flaw is it versus Hand of the King. By that point, you can get a flamethrower turret and a Hakuto bow. And an ice grenade. Or a magnetic grenade. You use your carbine. And that's fishing a bit, but use your carbine, your flamethrower, and your magnetic, all to get a ton of dots and damage on Hand of the King. So I think it's bad, but I think it can win. I think it's right there. Alright. Boy's Axe. Really good offhand. Really good. So unfortunately we don't have a ton of footage for Boy's Axe, but we do have this run that I did with the Nutcracker. And it shows it off okay enough. I think it's better with like double, like a Boy's Axe plus a throwing knife, but unfortunately my footage got corrupted. But it's still good. We can root an enemy, and generally that enemy is immune to root, obviously. But if we look at it with like something like a Nutcracker, we can root them and kill them in one hit usually. And that, you know, that's a very strong gimmick. And then on like a knife fire build, it's just really strong. It stun locks the enemies. You can stun lock certain bosses with it really easily. And it can be glass cannon-y, it can be support, it can stun enemies, it destroys Conjunctivious. If we look at the Conjunctivious fight, so we throw the axe on her, and she can't move, and destroys her. And it's just really strong. You can combine with Pardon Gift as well, so you can just clear out rooms. It's just a very powerful, very consistent item. And I think that merits... doesn't merit an S tier. I think it does. That might be me putting a bit of faith into it, but I think like a Boy's Axe throw knife build easily wins the game, and that might be for another reason. But I think a Boy's Axe Firebrand can win the game easily. A Boy's Axe Hakuto can. Boy's Axe Nutcracker obviously can. You can use it with a red Giant Killer. I wouldn't use Giant Killer in red personally, but you can. To mitigate Giant Killer's issues, you could use like Giant Killer, Lacerate and Aura. Actually, that sounds kind of good. I think it goes an S. Throwing Knife. So Throwing Knife is... how do I justify putting it right here with these two? It's does incredible damage. It has range. It pierces. It can spread bleed. It can spread poison. It gets really good affixes. This item's a super S tier, and I refuse to say anything else about it. We have the footage. We have the footage. Here's it plus a blood sword decimating the giant's HP. I believe this was... no, it wasn't during Paper Giant, but yeah. You take it with Ripper and a melee item, you're good. It just annihilates enemies' HP. I fell in lava. I suck. Oh, this is where he got glitched. He got glitched 2 videos in a row. What an idiot. Here's more footage of Knife just destroying Hand of the Cane. Or not Hand of the Cane, Giant. This is Double Knife, and it shreds his HP incredibly quick. You know an item is busted when 2 of the item makes enemies a complete joke. And are stun locking bosses. And obviously, Giant's already a joke, but yeah. Knife, super good. Alright, War Javelin. War Javelin. It is... I wanted to put it in F tier. I'm a War Javelin hater, I'll admit it. No. Yeah, alright, we're not gonna put it in F tier yet. Don't worry. But I did try and give it an honest run. So I did give it, I did give it its share. I ended up switching it out later, but I wanted to test it as a biome clear for something like Giant Killer. That was the main goal I had for it, and it did okay during this. So, basically the idea I had was we use it to clear out a room with Mushroom Boy, and it, by that point the enemy should have 1 HP left, and the Giant Killer can take it out. Or you can teleport on top of it and just take him out with a couple of swings. And it did decent in that. I got Curse Chest. Yeah, so I clear that. And that's what it's good at. It's good at just supporting it's good at supporting your main item. You're gonna use it offhand. Man, I'm playing this really dumb. I deserve to get killed there. Yeah, it's really good at supporting your main hand. In particular, I think it's good with a giant killer. Not that giant killer needs a ton of help, but it does help it clear out those enemies or get you out of situations where the giant killer might not get that kill off in a regular biome. So yeah, War Javelin's okay. I don't think it's a run winner, but it helps you win the run later on. I think right there is fine for it. That's the list. Alright. Hour and a half of footage to go through. I'm going to try and edit this pretty good. Hopefully, give me some feedback on my edit. Let me know if I cut too much, if it's jarring with the cuts, stuff like that. And let me know how dumb I am for saying something like Multi-Nox is good, or no, I'm not gonna listen to any opinions on. No, I'll listen to opinions. I love hearing feedback and trying out new ideas. That's sort of, what I've based on trying to base all my channel around, is trying dumb, stupid builds. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. So yeah, see you everyone.